Welcome to the deep dive. We're moving beyond just skimming the surface, really getting into the source material you need.
Yeah, digging deep.
Exactly. And today we are tackling, well, arguably the single biggest stumbling block for newcomers to 12-step programs. It's the thing that causes so much spiritual anxiety for anyone, agnostic or atheist.
That one big question.
That one. Do I have to believe in God?
It really does paralyze people.
Yeah.
You know, the second they see words like God or prayer or spiritual awakening, a lot of folks, especially if they're skeptical, maybe humanist, or, have had really negative experiences with organized religion.
Or trauma, even.
Absolutely. Trauma. They just immediately think, nope, this isn't for me.
And that's such a tragedy, isn't it? Because it completely misses the point, the actual foundation of how recovery fellowships work.
Right.
So our mission today is to really unpack the intensely non-religious, the fundamentally spiritual nature of this path. We're going to zoom right in on that crucial bit of language.
The escape clause.
Yeah, the escape clause, the permission slip, whatever you want to call it. God as we understood him. It's right there in step 3 and again in step 11.
It is absolutely central. And we need to say this right up front, especially if you're listening and feeling skeptical. The literature, the program itself, it's designed for you. It's built to accommodate skepticism.
Seriously. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking.
Right.
Period.
Full stop. That's it. The program doesn't hit you with dogma first. It starts with acknowledging the chaos in your life, and, crucially, it moves at your pace. We're going to show you exactly how the fellowship offers concrete, even non-theistic, ways to think about what a higher power could mean.
Okay, let's get into it then. If belief isn't the starting point, where does this journey actually kick off? It starts, really, with admitting defeat. What the literature sometimes calls a kind of pre-step, realizing your own management system has just completely failed. So the first official step, step 1, is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. But like you said, the sources suggest the real psychological shift starts even before that.
It often does. It starts with that raw, kind of gut-level necessity.
Yeah.
This pre-step, you see it talked about in sources like A Woman's Way Through the 12 Steps.
Yeah.
It's designed to meet you right where you are. Maybe admitting addiction is the problem feels like too big right away.
Okay.
So you can start smaller. Just conceding that, okay, some areas of your life are chaotic or out of control. It's that first flicker of awareness, like, whatever I'm doing, it's not working. This can't continue.
That might seem like just changing the words, but it feels huge because admitting powerlessness, wow, that sounds like total surrender, giving up. Which, for many people, especially those who, pride themselves on being capable.
Yeah, competent people, high-functioning types,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Right. It's terrifying. So how does the program take that moment of what feels like defeat and frame it as empowering?
It's all about confronting denial.
Yeah.
Checkham's work really emphasizes this. Up until that point, the addict is often trapped in layers of self-deception.
Yeah.
Justifying, minimizing, rationalizing.
Making excuses.
Exactly. So accepting powerlessness, admitting things are unmanageable, it's often the first truly, brutally honest thing someone has done in a long, long time. And that's empowering because you're finally dealing with reality.
Oh, yeah.
You're dropping that heavy, exhausting burden of pretending everything's fine, pretending you've got it under control, that whole self-sufficiency thing.
Okay, let's talk about that self-sufficiency because that seems like a really key concept here. It's the thing the program seems designed to dismantle. We see references to this treasured philosophy of self-sufficiency that has to be cast aside. Why is that idea, that I can handle it myself, so bad for recovery?
Because in the context of active addiction, self-sufficiency usually just means self-will. And self-will, as the Little Red Book study guide points out, is the real problem. It's the core issue.
Not just a symptom.
No, it's the engine. The sources even call the addict's self-will a juggernaut. Think about that image, this huge, relentless, unstoppable force. It just plows ahead blindly, smashing through relationships, jobs, health, finances. Because it's only driven by the immediate need, the impulse, the craving of the self, what I want right now.
So it's not just being selfish in a kind of normal way. It's like an inherently destructive force that's run off the rails.
Precisely. And when the suffering caused by that juggernaut gets bad enough, when your own best thinking and self-willed decisions have led to nothing but wreckage, isolation, maybe even institutions or jails, then the mind finally becomes open. Just maybe. Open to the idea that there might be another way. Your internal operating system has crashed.
That makes sense. So the path doesn't start with some big theological insight.
Not at all.
It starts with the raw necessity of admitting defeat. I like how Daily Reflections puts it. One member said their initial steps were driven purely by obligation and necessity.
Exactly. Long before any real belief or, enthusiasm showed up. Sometimes you just have to physically show up. Put one foot in front of the other, even if your head and heart aren't there yet. The body has to move first.
That's the ultimate paradox of recovery then, isn't it? You only start building something truly solid, like real self-worth, when you completely surrender the broken part, that addicted self-will.
And that's a huge psychological shift. A Woman's Way highlights this beautifully. That moment when you first identify as an addict, saying it out loud maybe, that identity, which feels like the ultimate source of shame initially, paradoxically becomes the starting point for healing. You're forced to look at your real self. Not the mask, not the I'm fine persona.
Right.
By acknowledging the thing that damaged you, you actually create the space for repair.
So step one isn't about appeasing some angry god. It's fundamentally about casting aside your own arrogance, your own flawed judgment.
Because it demonstrably failed.
Right, because it led to disaster. Life itself is demanding a new operating system, which brings us, inevitably, to that moment of panic. Okay, what is the new system?
If I'm not driving this bus anymore, who or what is?
And that leads straight into step two. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And then step three, the action. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. We really have to pull that phrase apart.
As we understood him. It's probably the most vital, most generous, and most flexible piece of spiritual tech in the whole program.
Yeah.
It explicitly gives you, the individual, the right to define your own higher power, or even just a source of help, a source of guidance, in a way that doesn't clash with your conscience or your skepticism or, your intellectual integrity.
And it's not just a throwaway line. It shows up again, right?
Yeah.
Step 11.
Exactly. The maintenance step, prayer and meditation. The goal there is to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. It reinforces that this concept is yours. It's personal. It can even change and evolve over time, daily even.
Okay, but let me push back a bit, playing the skeptic newcomer again. If the program really means to be non-religious, why use the word God at all? Why not just say the group or, good orderly direction GOD?
That's a fair question, and it gets us into the history and the structure and the traditions.
Yeah.
Sources like Not God are really clear on this. The AA traditions state very explicitly that the fellowship is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution.
Right, I've heard that.
And that's not just a suggestion, it's like structural law. It's there to protect the core mission. The main goal, helping people get sober, can't get sidetracked by arguments about theology or money or prestige. That would turn it into just another religious group.
So it has to stay spiritual, which they define broadly, like about inner growth and connection, but strictly non-denominational.
Precisely. They're aiming for a principle that goes beyond any specific belief system. And this focus on spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. That's also really important. It's a direct counter to a common trap for addicts. Which the sources sometimes call this neurotic disease.
Okay, tell me more about that. How does that show up in recovery?
Well, the program recognizes that people with addiction are often, all or nothing types, perfectionists.
Yeah, definitely see that.
There's often this relentless, maybe even unconscious, drive for glory, like needing to be the best, flawless, instantly perfect at whatever new thing they try.
Right.
Recovery included.
Right. I'm going to work the best steps ever.
Exactly. And that drive, if you don't watch it, is described as really treacherous. If the program demanded immediate, perfect spiritual belief or practice,
I see.
it would feed right into that unhealthy perfectionism.
Yeah.
And what happens when you inevitably fall short?
Relapse, burnout, discouragement.
Right. So by saying the goal is spiritual progress, it lowers that impossible bar. It takes the pressure off needing the perfect belief right now and replaces it with the practical, doable challenge of just continued growth, daily action.
That's a huge distinction. Progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. It makes it accessible. Which brings us back to you, the agnostic or atheist listener. If you can't wrap your head around a traditional God, what actual concrete non-theistic options are there for this power greater than yourself?
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's list them out. What does the literature offer?
Well, the first and maybe the most tangible one is the group, the fellowship itself. The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions points out, pretty pragmatically, that relying on an AA group hasn't really produced any baleful results. understatement.
Right. The simple fact that the people sitting in that room with you are sober, and maybe you're not yet, is hard evidence. Objective proof of some power working that's greater than your own isolated struggle.
The fellowship offers real, tangible experience, strength, and hope. You feel the collective weight, the shared understanding in that room. It's something you definitely couldn't create on your own.
That makes total sense. If I can't believe in a deity, I can believe in the fact that these 30 people haven't picked up a drink in years, and I desperately want what they have.
Exactly. That's a perfectly valid starting point. Then, moving inward, another source of power can be your own conscience, or inner voice.
How so?
Came to Believe, which is full of diverse stories, has members talking about how their first inkling of powerlessness came from that nagging voice of conscience, my own inner voice of truth and right.
Ah, the part of you that knew something was wrong, even when you were denying it.
Precisely. It's not necessarily an external message. It's that quiet, authentic part of yourself that the addiction was shouting down. For an agnostic, the higher power can simply be reconnecting with and starting to listen to that internal ethical compass that denial had muffled.
Okay, the group, the conscience. What about looking outward, beyond the room, to something bigger?
Then we get into concepts like spirit, or just the reality of the universe. Gabor Mate, in the realm of Hungry Ghosts, talks about spirit as being the most democratic and least denominational or divisive concept.
Democratic, I like that.
Yeah, it speaks to something that, goes beyond just the firing and wiring of neurons, beyond the purely mechanical brain. It points towards consciousness or interconnectedness or just the sheer scale and mystery of reality itself, something bigger than our damaged compulsive thought patterns.
The addict's brain gets stuck in these loops, right? Impulse, craving, regret.
Exactly. Driven by dysregulation.
Yeah.
But the spirit, in this sense, is the part of you that yearns for something more, something meaningful, something transcendent, even if transcendent just means recognizing the vastness of the cosmos compared to your immediate obsession.
This all sounds very influenced by earlier thinkers. I know William James comes up a lot in the history.
Oh, hugely.
Dr. Bob, one of the co-founders, was apparently a big admirer of James's book, The Varieties of Religious Experience. And this isn't just like a historical footnote, is it? It seems key for skeptics.
It is absolutely key. William James, being a pragmatist, was fascinated by how transformation actually happens psychologically. He studied what he called mind cure movements.
Mind cure.
Yeah, essentially forms of healing or regeneration that relied on shifts in attitude and belief. Gittins observed that these profound experiences of peace, renewal, feeling saved, they often weren't achieved through struggle or willpower.
But how then?
They came through relaxing, by letting go of what he called the private convulsive self, that tense, anxious, ego-driven part of us. And when you do that, he found you discover that a greater self is there.
So James basically showed that the psychological experience of awakening, of transformation, could happen without needing to buy into a specific theology. The act of surrendering the small, struggling self leads to this powerful, positive experience, regardless of what label you put on the greater self, God, universe, whatever.
Yeah. Exactly right. James showed this process was psychologically the same as religious justification by faith. But, and this is crucial, it worked just as well for people who had no conviction of sin and cared nothing for the Lutheran theology, as he put it.
Wow.
This gave the AA founders, especially Dr. Bob, who knew James's work well, the sort of intellectual backing they needed. They could tell the newcomer, the skeptic, look, it doesn't ultimately matter what you believe right now. What matters is, are you willing to try this mechanism of surrender, of letting go?
So it's less about the object of belief and more about the action of belief, the action of letting go.
It shifts the focus entirely, which leads us right into that paradoxical thing about faith and recovery. It very often follows the action. The spiritual experience isn't the ticket in, it's the result of doing the work.
Right.
Think about that classic line from the Big Book. I used to thank God for putting AA in my life. Now I thank AA for putting God in my life.
Yeah, I love that. The understanding, the spiritual connection came after participating, after taking the steps.
It grew out of the process itself. It wasn't required up front.
So if you're that hardcore skeptic, the program basically says, okay, fine. Borrow the faith of the group to now. Just show up, act as if there's something guiding this, however you need to define it, and see what happens.
And even just making that commitment, philosophically, requires some kind of faith. Russell Brand, in his book Recovery, makes this great point. He says something like, to see that the material world, the addiction cycle, is kind of bullshit, but to not give up, not clock off from life,
Yeah.
that requires faith. Just choosing to live, choosing connection, choosing to try for something better instead of despair, even if your faith is only in, like he says, dumb molecules doing their thing. That choice itself is a profound act of faith, an investment.
You're betting your time and energy that this process, these steps, this community will lead somewhere better than where you were. That's the real leap. Hashtag 33, the application of a spiritual path. Okay, so let's say the newcomer gets past that initial hurdle. They've found some way to conceptualize a higher power that works for them, the group, conscience, the universe, whatever. Now the path demands action.
Right. The theory has to become practice.
We move into the action steps. Introspection, confession, ongoing self-assessment. Steps 4 and 5 loom large here.
Absolutely. This is where that abstract idea of surrender starts to translate into real, concrete changes in how you see yourself and how you behave. It's about developing humility through action.
Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Okay, right there. Fearless moral inventory. For someone already drowning in shame and self-loathing, that sounds absolutely terrifying, like a recipe for more self-attack.
It definitely can be if you approach it wrong. That's a real danger, which is why the way it's framed in the literature is so important. A Woman's Way really stresses this. The goal isn't just to dredge up every bad thing you ever did and beat yourself up.
Okay, so what is the goal?
It's about getting to know yourself better. Taking that look, yes, but ideally in a spirit of self-acceptance, or at least aiming for it. Success isn't measured by how long your list of defects is. Success is finding even one tiny thing about yourself that gives you some insight.
So it's about seeking clarity, understanding your patterns, not about achieving some kind of moral purity score.
Exactly. It's a truth-seeking mission, not a punishment exercise. And that clarity, that self-honesty, leads directly into step 5.
Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. This one's often called the toughest step.
It frequently is.
Yeah.
But it's also described as absolutely essential for long-term sobriety, for real peace of mind. Why? Because it forces two crucial things: ego deflation and breaking the ultimate defense of addiction isolation.
Okay, but again, that structure, admitted to God first. If the program's non-religious, doesn't that still kind of privilege a theistic view? Why not just admit it to yourself and another person?
It's layered, psychologically. Think about it. The admission to God as we understood him, using that flexible definition again, is the first act of getting the burden outside of yourself. Moving the secrets, the shame from that obsessive internal echo chamber out into, well, the universe, or your concept of a higher principle.
Okay, externalizing it first.
Then the admission to another human being, your sponsor, a therapist, a trusted confidant, is the concrete proof of vulnerability. You're making the secret real in the shared world. Saying it out loud to someone else shatters that feeling of being uniquely terminally flawed.
And the payoff for doing that incredibly difficult, vulnerable thing, the literature calls it the beginning of true kinship.
Yes, the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions says the reward for step 5 is finally losing that crushing sense of isolation. The ego shrinks, makes space, and real humility can start to come in.
And humility here isn't about being a doormat.
Not at all. Daily Reflections has a beautiful definition. Humility is a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be.
Wow. Okay. Who we really are, warts and all, but then what we could be, that's aspirational. It's about growth, not just self-criticism.
Incredibly powerful, isn't it? It completely reframes humility as forward-looking, as potential.
Yeah.
And that potential, that growth, it's all nurtured and made possible by the community. You can't really do this spiritual path alone. It relies fundamentally on human connection.
That fellowship aspect.
The fellowship provides that camaraderie and collective spirit that the isolated addict just doesn't have.
You hear so many stories about that feeling of connection in meetings, like, finally, people who get it.
Yeah.
How do the sources explain how that actually works psychologically or spiritually?
It's about breaking through that isolation barrier. Courage to Change gives a great example. Someone sitting in a meeting, maybe feeling too ashamed or scared to share what's really going on inside. And then someone else shares and describes exactly the feeling the first person was hiding. That hidden fear, that specific resentment.
That moment of recognition.
Yes. And in that instant, the isolation just shatters. The thought is, oh my God, I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. I'm no longer alone. That is the spiritual experience manifesting right there as human connection. as safety.
That's a perfect practical example of a higher power working through other people. And it connects to that idea of intimacy and recovery too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Intimacy, as a woman's way defines it here, isn't necessarily romantic. It's about being willing to let ourselves be seen and known.
Vulnerability.
Exactly. Addiction thrives in secrecy and keeping people at arm's length. By connecting to your higher power, however you define it, and connecting vulnerably with other people, you expand your sense of self, you build real self-worth, and you break those old, rigid patterns of emotional isolation.
Okay, so you work through these initial intense steps. Then what? It's not like you're cured, right?
Not at all. The steps aren't a checklist you finish. They're described as a simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet, tools you have to keep using.
Right. The maintenance steps, 10 and 11.
Step 10 is the ongoing inventory. Keep looking at your assets and your liabilities. Keep admitting when you're wrong, promptly. Don't let stuff build up.
Like daily housekeeping for the soul.
Kind of, yeah. This continuous inventory isn't just about staying sober. It facilitates ongoing growth. It helps you stay emotionally balanced, handle life on life's terms, and actually become more understanding and helpful to others. It's the check-in that makes sure that juggernaut of self-will doesn't creep back in unnoticed.
And then step 11 brings us right back to where we started in a way, back to that flexible idea of a higher power.
It does. And the literature, as Bill sees it, suggests that while the other steps can keep most people sober, keep them functioning, step 11, the prayer and meditation part, is what keeps people growing.
Growing.
Yeah, if you work at it consistently. That spiritual connection needs to be actively nurtured or it can fade.
Okay, but again, for the skeptic listener, prayer and meditation, those words can be immediate turnoffs. How can you approach step 11 without a traditional God concept?
The sources give a lot of room here. Meditation fundamentally is about turning inward, quieting the external noise, quieting the chaotic, addictive chatter of the mind. That's a valuable practice regardless of belief.
Okay, makes sense. Quieting the noise.
And prayer. Well, even without a specific deity to pray to, it could be framed differently. Recovery freedom from our addictions suggests thinking of it as a deep commitment to a higher self, or maybe an ideal self.
So focusing your intention.
Exactly. It becomes a conscious focusing of your mind and intention on the person you want to be, the principles you want to live by: honesty, humility, service, turning away from those old, unconscious, fear-based drives that ran the show during active addiction.
So it's like a disciplined, conscious effort to align yourself with your best self, guided by the principles you've learned through the other steps.
Yes. And crucially, it's self-discipline, guided by principles that are not purely self-driven or self-serving anymore. That's the key difference. It leads away from self-centeredness, allows you to show up in the world differently, not driven by fear and craving, but maybe by a desire to contribute, to be helpful, to do the next right thing. That willingness, that commitment, that's the core spiritual practice the program really asks for. #tag outro.
So we started with that huge question, the one that really does stop people cold. Do I have to believe in God?
Mm-hmm.
And after digging into the sources, doing this deep dive, the answer seems to be a pretty profound and hopefully comforting no, at least not in any fixed, prescribed, dogmatic way.
Not at all. The whole structure, that constant refrain as we understood him,
Yeah.
it's all about flexibility. It's built right in.
The spiritual journey, the awakening, whatever you want to call it, it's presented as the result of doing the work.
Yeah, an outcome.
Humility, the honesty, the connection with others, that's what leads to the spiritual shift. It's not the price of admission.
Exactly. Yeah. The program just asks you to show up, commit to the process, invest in it. Trust the shared experience, trust the practical steps. Believe that if you just bring the body, as they sometimes
That's
say.
the footwork.
Do the footwork, yeah.
Yeah.
Then the mind, the spirit, the understanding, it will follow. It will awaken in its own time, in its own way.
And that awakening, that's where the real lasting change comes from. The sources talk about this spiritual change, awakening a kind of sacred reality.
Mm-hmm.
There's that beautiful image from A Woman's Way, comparing it to the lotus flower. It keeps the person rooted in the mud, like the lotus, but nourishes them so they grow, unfold, and blossom into a flower of great beauty.
Such a powerful metaphor. The lotus is grounded in the muck, right? Rooted in the reality, the pain, the chaos you admitted back in step 1.
Right, not denying the mud.
Not denying the mud at all, but rising from it, reaching towards the light and flowering anyway.
So the final thought for you, listening. What might it look like for your consciousness, your life, to blossom like that? When it's finally rooted not in denial and isolation, but in reality, in honesty and vulnerability, That's the possibility. That's the spiritual progress offered here, even especially if you started out skeptical.
A lot to think about.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.